The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom cast dancing lights across hundreds of guests dressed in designer clothes. Each chandelier alone cost more than most people made in a year, their Swarovski crystals imported directly from Austria. The ballroom itself was a masterpiece of opulence. Marble floors so polished you could see your reflection, gold-leafed columns reaching toward a hand-painted ceiling, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Darmain Richards raised his champagne glass, Dom Perignon naturally, nothing but the best, his diamond Rolex catching the light as he basked in the celebration of his tech company's billion-dollar merger. At 35 years old, he had achieved what most people only dreamed of. His company, Rich Tech Solutions, had just been acquired by a Silicon Valley giant, making him one of the youngest billionaires in the state. His wife, Elena, stood beside him in a stunning silver gown custom designed by Vera Wang, her dark hair swept up in an elegant chignon, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. She looked every inch the society wife, born into wealth, educated at the finest schools, never wanting for anything. Their twin daughters, Maya and Mia, age 8, twirled across the dance floor in matching pink ball gowns that cost more than most people's monthly rent. They looked like little princesses from a fairy tale, their laughter tinkling like bells across the crowded room. "Speech, speech," the crowd chanted, banging their silverware against crystal glasses in that age-old tradition. Darmain smiled broadly, surveying his kingdom of success. He'd worked for this moment for 10 years, carefully constructing not just a business empire, but an entire identity. An identity that had no connection to where he'd come from. He cleared his throat, and the room fell silent, all eyes on him. 10 years ago, he began, his voice smooth and confident, practiced from dozens of boardroom presentations, I had nothing. I was just a kid with a dream and a laptop. Today, I have everything. A beautiful wife, gorgeous daughters, a company that's changing the world, and friends who've supported me every step of the way. He paused for effect. And I did it all by myself, through hard work, determination, and never giving up on my vision. The crowd erupted in applause. Men in $1,000 suits nodded approvingly. Women in designer gowns wiped away tears. Elena kissed his cheek proudly, her eyes shining with admiration for the man she'd married, the self-made success story who'd won her heart. The girls giggled and danced, completely absorbed in the fairy tale of their father's triumph, unaware that fairy tales often leave out the darkest parts of the story. But outside in the pouring rain, a figure stood watching through the window. A ghost from a past Darmain had worked so hard to bury, a reminder of a truth he'd spent 10 years trying to erase. Grace Richards stood shivering at the hotel entrance, her tattered coat soaked through, clinging to her thin frame like a second skin. The coat had once been nice. She'd bought it at a thrift store 5 years ago, and it had been almost new then. Now it was threadbare, the lining torn, the zipper broken. Underneath, she wore her only decent dress, a faded blue thing she'd owned for over a decade, and shoes with soles so worn she could feel every pebble on the ground. At 42 years old, Grace looked at least 10 years older. Her face was gaunt, her hair streaked with premature gray, her hands rough and calloused from years of manual labor. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights and constant worry. Her body was thin, too thin, the result of skipping meals to save money and an illness that was slowly consuming her from the inside out. The security guard blocked her path with a stern expression, his hand hovering near his radio. He'd been trained to spot trouble, and this woman, wet, poor, desperate, looked like trouble. "Ma'am, this is a private event. Do you have an invitation?" His tone made it clear he already knew the answer. Grace's voice trembled as she spoke, her teeth chattering from the cold. I'm Darmain's sister. Please, I just need to give him this." She held up a sealed envelope with shaking hands, yellowed with age and protected carefully in a plastic bag. She'd kept it safe for 2 years, waiting for the right moment, hoping that maybe, just maybe, her brother would finally see her. The security guard's expression shifted from stern to suspicious, then to something like pity. He'd seen this before, people claiming to know the rich and famous, desperate for a moment of their time, for money, for recognition. He spoke into his radio, his voice professional but dismissive. "Sir, there's a homeless woman here claiming to be your sister." Inside the ballroom, Darmain heard the words through his earpiece. He'd insisted on being connected to security. You couldn't be too careful at an event like this, with so many wealthy, powerful people in attendance. But he'd never expected this. His hand tightened around his champagne glass so hard his knuckles turned white. The blood drained from his face. He glanced quickly at Elena, who was laughing with a group of her society friends, then at the girls who were begging the DJ to play their favorite song. His entire, carefully constructed life flashed before his eyes. Everything he'd built, every lie he'd told about his past, every time he'd claimed to be self-made, it could all come crashing down in an instant. His wife's wealthy family, the society circles he'd worked so hard to penetrate, the business partners who admired his bootstrap story of success, none of them knew the truth. None of them could ever know. "I don't have a sister," he said coldly into the radio, his voice devoid of emotion, mechanical. "Remove her, now." He turned off the earpiece and plastered his smile back on, accepting congratulations from a group of investors, laughing at their jokes, playing the role of the successful, happy man who'd made it all on his own. Outside, 2 burly security guards escorted Grace away from the entrance. She stumbled on the slick pavement, her worn shoes sliding on the wet ground, dropping the envelope in a puddle. Frantically, desperately, she scooped it up, clutching it to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world, because to her, it was. It was her mother's dying wish. It was the last connection to a brother who'd forgotten her. "Please," Grace cried, her voice breaking, tears streaming down her face. "Just let me see him for 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Our mother, she made me promise to give him this. She's dead. She died 2 years ago, and I promised her." "Lady, Mr. Richards was very clear. He doesn't know you." The guard's voice was firm, but not entirely unkind. He'd been doing this job for 15 years, and something about this woman's grief seemed genuine. But orders were orders. As they pushed her toward the street, Grace clutched the soaked envelope to her chest, tears streaming down her face and mixing with the rain. Through the glass doors, she could see Darmain laughing, his daughters climbing on his lap, his perfect life on display like a museum exhibit, beautiful, untouchable, and completely disconnected from reality, disconnected from the truth of who he really was and who had made him. "I raised you," she whispered into the storm, her voice barely audible over the rain and thunder. "I gave up everything for you. Everything." She remembered the little boy he'd been, the scared 7-year-old who cried in her arms when their father left, abandoning them without a word or a dollar to their names. The 9-year-old who came home from school with a black eye because kids made fun of his secondhand clothes, and she'd held him and promised him that one day things would be better. The 12-year-old who got a perfect score on his entrance exam for the prestigious Riverside Academy, and she'd cried tears of joy, even though she had no idea how she'd pay the tuition. She remembered working 3 jobs, cleaning office buildings from midnight to 6 in the morning, waitressing at the diner from 7 to 3 in the afternoon, and cleaning houses in the evenings. She remembered sleeping 4 hours a night for years. She remembered the meals she'd skipped so he could eat, the dates she'd turned down because she had no time for her own life, the dreams she'd put aside. She'd wanted to be a teacher once, had even gotten accepted to college, but there was no money for that.
Not when Darmain needed her. A passing car splashed dirty water on her already ruined clothes, soaking her to the bone. Grace walked away into the night, alone, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, each step taking her further from the brother she'd sacrificed everything for, the brother who now pretended she didn't exist. An hour later, the party was in full swing. Crystal clinked against crystal in endless toasts. Laughter echoed off the high ceilings. The champagne flowed freely, thousands of dollars worth being consumed as if it were water. A live band played smooth jazz, and couples danced on the polished floor. It was the kind of party you saw in movies, the kind that most people only dreamed of attending. Maya tugged on Darmain's sleeve, her small face troubled, her blue eyes, so much like her aunt's, though she'd never know that, filled with confusion and concern. "Daddy, who was that sad lady outside?" Darmain Girly glanced down, his attention on a conversation with a potential investor. "Nobody, sweetheart, just someone confused." "But she was crying, Daddy. She looked really sad. And cold. It's raining really hard outside." Maya's voice carried that particular insistence that 8-year-olds have when they know something isn't right. "She said she was your sister. Don't you have a sister?" "No, baby. I don't have any siblings. I'm an only child." The lie came so easily now after years of practice. Elena pulled Maya away with a tight smile, her perfectly manicured nails digging slightly into her daughter's shoulder. "Don't bother your father with silly questions. Not tonight. This is Daddy's special night." But Maya wasn't the only one who'd noticed. Several guests near the entrance had seen the commotion. Whispers had started. In a crowd like this, rumors spread fast. Suddenly, the music seemed to dim. An elderly woman in a simple black dress approached Darmain, cutting through the crowd with purpose. It was Mrs. Patterson, his childhood neighbor, someone he'd hoped never to see again. She'd lived in the apartment next to theirs on Baker Street, had watched Grace raise him, been there through all of it. Her presence sent ice through his veins. "Darmain Richards," she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, her voice carrying across the space. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. People leaned in to listen, sensing drama, sensing that perfect moment when the facade cracks and the truth comes spilling out. Nothing was more entertaining to the wealthy than watching someone's secrets get exposed. Darmain's smile froze on his face, a mask cracking but not quite breaking. "I think you have me confused with someone else, ma'am. Perhaps you should." "Do I?" Mrs. Patterson pulled out her phone, scrolling through old photos with practiced ease. She had prepared for this moment. "This is you at age 12, wearing clothes 2 sizes too big because they were hand-me-downs from the donation box at the community center. And this," she held up the phone, showing a faded photograph, "this is your sister Grace, working at the diner on 4th Street. She was 18 there, looked about 30 from exhaustion. She was working her 3rd job that year to pay for your school supplies, your uniform, your tuition at Riverside Academy." "That's not..." Darmain started, but his voice faltered. Several guests had crowded closer, looking at the phone, at the undeniable evidence. Elena's eyes widened, her champagne glass hovering mid-air, her hand trembling slightly. "Darmain, what is she talking about? You told me you grew up in the suburbs, that your parents were middle-class professionals who died in a car accident. You said you put yourself through Harvard with scholarships and part-time work." Mrs. Patterson's voice grew stronger, filled with righteous anger, the kind of anger that comes from watching someone throw away love and loyalty like garbage. "Your mother worked as a janitor at night, cleaning those fancy office buildings downtown. She worked as a waitress in the morning at Murphy's Diner, serving breakfast to people who looked right through her like she was invisible. And she cleaned houses in the afternoon, houses like this one probably." She gestured around the opulent ballroom. "All so you could go to that fancy private school. All so you could have the opportunity she never had. All so you didn't have to be ashamed." "That's enough," Darmain shouted, but the damage was done. Guests were whispering behind manicured hands, pulling out their phones, recording this unexpected turn of events. In the age of social media, his carefully constructed reputation was crumbling in real time. "Your mother died 2 years ago," Mrs. Patterson continued, her voice breaking with emotion, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Grace couldn't afford a proper funeral. She buried your mother alone in a pauper's grave at Riverside Cemetery, plot number 247, in the section where they bury people who have nothing. I was the only one there with her. We stood in the rain, just the 2 of us, and she cried so hard I thought she'd break. She kept saying, Mama wanted Darmain here. She wanted to see him one more time. But you had changed your number. You'd moved across the country. You'd erased your past like it was a mistake to be corrected, an error in your story that needed to be deleted. Maya started crying, confused and frightened by the tension, by the anger in the old woman's voice, by the way her father's face had gone white like a sheet. Daddy, is that true? Did you have a sister? Did you have a grandma? Why didn't we know? Maya clutched her twin's hand, her lower lip trembling. Daddy? And that woman you just threw out in the rain? She's been trying to give you this letter from your mother for 2 years. 2 years, Darmain. She's tracked you down at your office. Security removed her. She's tried to call. You blocked her number. She's written letters. You returned them unopened. This letter was your mother's dying wish. She wrote it 3 days before she died, when she could barely hold a pen. But you were too proud, too ashamed of where you came from. Darmain's hands shook as he took the envelope, staring at his mother's familiar handwriting, the same handwriting that signed his permission slips, that wrote encouraging notes in his lunchbox, that penned letters to him at Harvard that he'd eventually stopped reading. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Elena grabbed the girl's hands, her voice sharp, cutting. We're leaving. Now. Girls, get your coats. No, Darmain whispered, unable to take his eyes off the envelope, unable to move. Wait? Elena's voice rose. You've been lying to me for 12 years, Darmain. 12 years. About everything. Your family, your past, who you really are. What else have you lied about? Elena, please. No, the girls and I are leaving. You can deal with whatever this is. When you're ready to tell me the truth, all of it, you know where to find us. She swept out of the ballroom with Maya and Mia, leaving Darmain standing alone in a room full of whispering guests, holding his mother's letter, his perfect life shattering around him like the crystal chandeliers overhead. He excused himself and retreated to a private room, his legs barely supporting him. The sounds of the party, now muted and awkward, were muffled through the walls. With trembling fingers, he opened the envelope. His mother's handwriting, shaky from illness but still unmistakably hers, each letter formed with the careful precision she'd always had, swam before his eyes as tears blurred his vision. My dearest Darmain, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And knowing your pride, knowing how much you've changed, Grace probably had to move heaven and earth just to get this to you. I don't have much time, so I'll be direct. Grace is sick, son. The doctors found it last year, stage 3 cancer, the same illness that took your grandmother, the one that eats away at everything slowly, painfully, mercilessly. They gave her maybe 2 years, maybe, if she's lucky, if the treatment works. But treatment costs money, and Grace has nothing. But she made me promise not to tell you. She made me swear on my deathbed. She said you had finally made it, that you were finally happy, and she didn't want to burden you with her problems. She didn't want to ruin your new life. That's who your sister is. That's who she's always been, putting everyone else first, especially you. Every sacrifice she made, every meal she skipped so you could eat, every dream she gave up so you could have yours, every boyfriend she sent away because she didn't have time for love when she had a little brother to raise. Every night she cried herself to sleep from exhaustion. She did it all with love, with joy even, because watching you succeed was enough for her. When you got that scholarship to Harvard, she cried for 3 days. Happy tears, Darmain. She was so proud she could barely speak. She called me every day just to talk about it. Mama, my baby brother is going to Harvard. Harvard! He's going to be somebody. He's going to have everything I never had. I need you to know something else. That down payment for your first business? The $50,000 you thought came from an anonymous investor who believed in your vision? That was Grace. She sold our family home, the only thing we had left,
The house your grandfather built with his own hands in 1952, board by board. The house where you were born, where we had every Christmas, every birthday, every memory. She sold it and gave you every penny. She lives in a shelter now, son. St. Mary's Mission on 11th Street. She has a cot in a room with 20 other women. She has to be out by 7 every morning and can't come back until 6 at night. In the winter, she walks the streets during the day because she has nowhere else to go. And she's never said a word of complaint. She just asks about you. Is Darmain happy, Mama? Did he marry that nice girl Elena? Are my nieces beautiful? Tell me about them. I want to know everything. I'm not writing this to make you feel guilty. I'm writing this because Grace will never tell you. She loves you too much. She thinks protecting you from the truth is the same as loving you. She thinks your happiness is worth more than her pain. But I'm your mother, and I need to tell you the truth. Your sister is dying, and she's dying alone. She's dying thinking she failed you somehow, that she wasn't good enough to be part of your new life. Whatever success you have, whatever money you've made, whatever status you've achieved, none of it exists without Grace's sacrifice. You are standing on a foundation built by her calloused hands and broken dreams. Every degree you earned, every business deal you closed, every dollar you made, it's all built on what she gave up. Don't let pride steal the time you have left with her. Don't let my baby girl die thinking she wasn't enough for you to love back. Don't let her die alone in that shelter, surrounded by strangers, without her family. Your sister's address is at the bottom of this letter. Go to her, Darmain, before it's too late. Before you lose the only person who ever loved you without condition, without expectation, without wanting anything in return. I love you, son. I always have. But I'm ashamed of what you've become. Not the success. I'm proud of that. But the man who could throw away his sister like she was nothing? The man who could lie about where he came from? The man who could be ashamed of the woman who gave up her entire life for him? Make this right, Darmain, while you still can. All my love, Mama. P.S. Grace has a box of your things from childhood. Your baseball glove, your science fair ribbons, pictures of the two of you. She keeps them in her locker at the shelter. She looks at them sometimes when she thinks no one's watching. She never stopped loving you, even when you stopped loving her. The letter fell from Darmain's hands as he collapsed to his knees on the expensive carpet. He couldn't breathe. His chest felt like it was being crushed by a vice. The room spun. Everything he'd built, every success he'd claimed as his own, every time he said, "I did it myself," it was all built on his sister's sacrifice, on her pain, on her love. And he'd repaid her with denial and shame. He'd thrown her away like garbage because acknowledging her meant acknowledging where he came from. It meant admitting that he wasn't self-made, that he wasn't the success story he'd sold to everyone. It meant being vulnerable, being real, being human. Darmain sat in that room for 20 minutes, sobbing, the sounds of the party beyond the door continuing without him. Finally, he stood, his tuxedo rumpled, his eyes red, his face blotchy. He walked back into the ballroom. The room fell silent when they saw him. Mrs. Patterson stood near the door, arms crossed, watching him. "The party's over," Darmain announced to the room. "Thank you all for coming. Please go home." There were murmurs of confusion, protests, but he didn't care anymore. He found the event coordinator. "Shut it down, now. I don't care what it costs." Then he ran. Darmain burst through the downtown shelter doors like a man possessed, still in his tuxedo, rain-soaked and frantic. His perfectly styled hair was plastered to his head, his bow tie hung loose around his neck, his expensive Italian leather shoes were ruined, squeaking with every step. He looked like a madman, and several of the shelter residents flinched away from him. "Grace Richards! I'm looking for Grace Richards!" His voice echoed through the sparse concrete lobby. The night worker looked up from her computer, startled by the desperate, well-dressed man who had just burst in. She was used to seeing desperation here, but not from people wearing tuxedos. She checked her records carefully, scrolling through the sign-in sheet. She was here, but she left about an hour ago. She seemed upset, more than usual. She was crying pretty hard, shaking a lot. I tried to talk to her, to get her to stay and warm up, but she just grabbed her coat and walked out into the rain. She said something about the bridge. The worker's face was worried. She's never done that before. Usually she just goes to her cot, reads a book. She's one of our quiet ones. Darmain's blood ran cold. Which bridge? Miller Street Bridge. Sir, is she okay? Should I call someone? She seemed very upset tonight. I've worked here 5 years and I've never seen her like that. Darmain didn't wait to hear more. He ran back out into the rain, his heart pounding, praying he wasn't too late, praying that his pride and shame hadn't cost him the only person who ever loved him without condition, without expectation, without wanting anything in return. Grace stood at the edge of Miller Street Bridge at midnight, rain pouring down in sheets so heavy she could barely see the city lights beyond. The bridge swayed slightly in the wind. Or maybe that was just her legs, weak from illness and exhaustion and the weight of everything she'd been carrying for so long. Below her, the dark water churned and roared, angry and cold and infinite. The letter was still clutched in her hand, ruined by water and tears, but she'd memorized every word years ago anyway. She'd read it 1,000 times in the 2 years since her mother died, hoping that someday, somehow, Darmain would want to read it too. But tonight had proven that some hopes were foolish. 20 years, she whispered to the abyss below, her voice barely audible over the rain and wind. 20 years I gave him everything. I gave my youth, my dreams, my health, my life. I turned down Thomas's proposal because I couldn't leave Darmain alone. I gave up my college scholarship because someone had to work. I sacrificed everything. And tonight, he looked at me like I was nothing, like I was garbage to be thrown away, like I was an embarrassment, a stain on his perfect life. She thought about her mother's funeral, standing alone in the rain with only Mrs. Patterson beside her. She thought about the years of silence, the returned letters, the blocked calls. She thought about lying awake at night in the shelter, wondering why she wasn't enough, why her love wasn't enough. "I'm so tired," she said to the storm. "I'm so tired of hurting. I'm so tired of being alone. I'm so tired of fighting this cancer with no money for treatment. I'm so tired of remembering his little face, how he used to say he loved me, how he used to promise we'd always be together. I'm just so tired." She looked down at the water again. It would be easy, so easy. Just one step and the pain would stop. The rejection would stop. The cancer would stop. Everything would finally stop. "Grace!" She turned, her heart stopping. Through the rain, she could see Darmain running toward her, his tuxedo torn and muddy, his face covered in tears and rain, his expensive shoes ruined by puddles. He looked desperate, broken, nothing like the polished businessman from the party. "Grace, please, step away from the edge. Please." "Why?" Grace's voice was hollow, defeated, empty of everything but pain. "Why should I, Darmain? You made it very clear tonight. I don't exist to you. I'm just an embarrassment, a reminder of a past you'd rather forget, a dirty secret that might ruin your perfect life. I'm sorry," Darmain sobbed, falling to his knees in the rain 20 feet from her, his hands outstretched, pleading. "I'm so sorry. God, Grace, I'm so sorry. I was ashamed. I was a coward. I was selfish and stupid and cruel. I wanted to forget where I came from, and I threw away the only person who ever truly loved me. I threw away everything that mattered." Grace's legs trembled. She swayed slightly, the wind pushing her, the darkness calling to her. You threw me away like garbage. Like I was nothing. Like everything I did meant nothing. I know, and I hate myself for it. Darmain crawled forward on his hands and knees, heedless of the puddles soaking his expensive tuxedo, heedless of his dignity, of anything but reaching his sister. Grace, Mama's letter, I read it. I know you're sick. I know you have cancer. I know about the house, Grandpa's house that he'd built for us. I know about the $50,000. I know about everything you sacrificed. Every single thing. Thunder cracked overhead and Grace flinched. It doesn't matter anymore. It's too late. I'm dying, Darmain. The cancer's spreading. I can't afford treatment. I'm going to die alone in that shelter, and you'll go on with your perfect life, and it will be like I never existed. It matters to me. Grace, you're my sister. You're the reason I'm alive. You're the reason I had any chance at all. Darmain's voice broke completely, raw and desperate. Please, please don't leave me. I can't lose you two. I can't lose you like I lost Mama. I can't lose the only person who ever loved me unconditionally. Please, Grace, please. You don't love me. You proved that tonight. I do love you. I always have. I was just too proud to show it, too ashamed to admit I needed you, too scared that acknowledging you meant admitting I wasn't self-made. The words poured out of him in a torrent. I was terrified that if people knew the truth, they'd see me differently. They'd know I wasn't special, that I was just a poor kid from Baker Street who got lucky because his sister loved him enough to give up everything. I thought if I could pretend I did it alone, it would make it more real, make me more worthy. He crawled closer, now just 10 feet from her. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. You're the one who made me worthy. You're the one who made me into someone who could succeed. Without you, I'm nothing. I am nothing. Grace turned to look at her brother, really look at him. He was broken, crying, begging on his knees in the rain. His perfect tuxedo was ruined. His careful mask was shattered. For the first time in years, she saw the little boy she'd raised, the one who'd cried when kids made fun of his secondhand clothes, the one who'd hugged her tight every night and thanked her for everything, the one who'd promised he'd take care of her someday. You promised me, she said softly, tears streaming down her face. When you graduated from Harvard, you held my hands and you promised that once you made it, you'd take care of me. You said I'd never have to work again, that I'd never have to worry again. You promised, Darmain. I know, and I broke that promise. I broke every promise, but let me keep this one. Please don't jump. Please step back. Please give me a chance to make this right. I know I don't deserve it. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, Darmain, please don't leave me. Grace looked at the water below, then back at her brother. Something in his eyes, maybe it was the desperation, maybe it was just seeing him truly broken for the first time, maybe it was just that she was tired of hurting, made her step back from the edge. Her knees buckled immediately, her body giving out from exhaustion and illness and the emotional weight of everything. Darmain lunged forward, catching her before she hit the ground, wrapping his arms around her in a fierce embrace. I've got you, he sobbed into her hair. I've got you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've got you now, and I'm never letting go again. Never. Grace cried into his shoulder, 20 years of pain and loneliness and rejection pouring out of her. I missed you so much. I missed my little brother so much. I'm here. I'm here now. I'm so sorry I left. I'm so sorry I left. They knelt there in the rain for a long time, two siblings reunited, holding on to each other like lifelines, while the storm raged around them and the bridge swayed beneath them, and the world continued spinning indifferent to their pain and their healing. Finally, Darmain pulled back, cupping Grace's face in his hands. We need to get you to a hospital, now. You're burning up with fever. I don't have insurance. I can't afford. I don't care.
Money doesn't matter. Nothing matters except keeping you alive. Come on. He helped her stand, supporting her weight as they walked back across the bridge to his car, a black Mercedes that looked absurd parked on this rundown street. He helped her into the passenger seat, turned the heat up full blast, and drove to the best private hospital in the city. 3 days later, Grace woke up in a bright, clean hospital room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite. Soft sunlight filtered through expensive curtains. Real art hung on the walls. Not prints, but actual paintings. The bed was comfortable, with high thread count sheets and a plush blanket. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming or dead, because rooms like this didn't exist for people like her. Darmain sat beside her bed, holding her hand. His eyes were red-rimmed from crying, dark circles underneath from lack of sleep. He was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. She'd never seen him in casual clothes, and it made him look younger, more like the brother she remembered. Alana stood behind him with Maya and Mia, all three looking worried, but hopeful. "You're awake," Darmain whispered, fresh tears falling down his cheeks. "You scared me. You've been unconscious for 3 days." "What happened?" Grace's voice was hoarse. "You collapsed on the bridge. Hypothermia and exhaustion. You've been here for 3 days. The doctors ran every test imaginable, MRIs, CT scans, blood work, everything." He took a shaky breath. "Grace, why didn't you tell me how sick you are? The cancer is in your lungs and lymph nodes. You needed treatment months ago." Grace turned away, unable to meet his eyes. "You didn't want to know me. Why would I burden you with my problems?" Elena stepped forward, her own eyes filled with tears. She'd spent the last 3 days learning the truth about her husband's past, seeing the evidence of everything Grace had sacrificed. "I'm so sorry, Grace. Darmain told me everything he should have told me years ago. What you did for him, for our family, the sacrifices you made, we owe you everything. Without you, none of this would exist. Without you, I wouldn't have the man I love, and my daughters wouldn't have their father." She sat on the edge of the bed, taking Grace's other hand. "I grew up with everything handed to me. I never knew struggle, never knew sacrifice. But you're the strongest woman I've ever met, and I'm ashamed that I didn't know about you sooner."
"I'm ashamed that my husband hid you away like you were something to be embarrassed about, when you're actually the most remarkable person in this whole story." Little Maya climbed onto the bed carefully, her small face serious, her blue eyes, so much like Grace's, filled with concern. "Auntie Grace, Daddy says you made him who he is. He says you're a real superhero, like in the movies, but better, because you're real. He says you gave up everything so he could have everything." Mia added softly, clutching a homemade card covered in glitter and stickers. "We made you this, and Daddy says you're coming to live with us forever and ever. You get to have your own room, and we can decorate it however you want, and you can have breakfast with us every morning, and we'll take care of you when you're sick." Grace's tears finally came, hot and fast, streaming down her face. Years of holding everything in, of being strong, of pretending she was fine. It all broke open. "Darmain, I can't. No more apologies," Darmain said firmly, his voice thick with emotion but also with determination. "No more shame, no more hiding. You're my sister, you're their aunt, your family, and I'm going to spend every single day I have left making up for the years I lost, for the love I should have shown you, for every single time I should have been there and wasn't." He pulled out a legal document, freshly printed and already notarized. "I've already talked to the lawyers. Half of everything I own is yours. The house, the company, the investments, the bank accounts, everything. It should have always been yours. You gave me my start. You gave me my life. It's just starting to pay back a debt I can never fully repay." "I don't want your money," Grace whispered, shaking her head weakly. "I know. That's exactly why you deserve it. People who want money for the wrong reasons don't deserve it. People who sacrificed everything and never asked for anything back, those are the people who deserve everything. I love you, big sister. I always have. I was just too proud and stupid and selfish to show it. But I'm going to show you every day from now on. Dr. Morrison entered the room then, a tall woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. Good, you're awake. I'm Dr. Sarah Morrison, head of oncology here. I've been reviewing your case, Grace. Grace's heart sunk. She knew what came next, the speech about how they do their best, about palliative care, about making her comfortable in her final months. Your cancer is advanced, Dr. Morrison continued, pulling up scans on the room's display screen. Stage 3, metastase to your lymph nodes and beginning to spread to your lungs. Without treatment, you'd have perhaps 6 months, maybe less. I know, Grace said quietly. I couldn't afford treatment, so... But with treatment, Dr. Morrison continued, her voice stronger, with aggressive chemotherapy, radiation, and a new immunotherapy trial we're running here, your prognosis is much better. I'd say we have a 70% chance of getting you into remission, maybe higher. Grace stared at her. But I can't. The cost is taken care of, Darmain said, interrupting. Every penny, whatever it takes. The best doctors, the best treatment, experimental trials, everything. Dr. Morrison is the best oncologist in the country. I've already signed all the papers. It won't be easy, Dr. Morrison warned. The treatment is aggressive. You'll lose your hair, you'll be sick, you'll have days when you want to give up. But you'll have support. She glanced at Darmain and his family, and that makes all the difference. Grace looked at her brother, at his wife, at the 2 little girls who were supposed to be strangers, but were looking at her with such love and hope. I don't know what to say. Say you'll fight, Darmain pleaded. Say you'll let me be there for you the way you were there for me. Say you'll give me a chance to be the brother you deserved all along. Grace nodded, unable to speak through her tears. The next few months were hard. Harder than anything Grace had ever experienced, and she'd experienced plenty of hard things. The chemotherapy made her violently ill. She lost her hair, her strength, her appetite. There were days when she couldn't get out of bed, when even breathing felt like too much effort. But she wasn't alone. Darmain was there for every treatment, holding her hand through the nausea, bringing her ice chips when she couldn't keep anything down, reading to her when she was too weak to hold a book. He'd taken a leave of absence from his company, telling his board that family came first, that all the money in the world meant nothing if you lost the people you loved. Elena was there too, learning to cook the bland foods Grace could tolerate, sitting with her during the long nights when sleep wouldn't come, and gently washing her hair before it fell out, and helping her pick out scarves and wigs. Maya and Mia were a constant source of light. They drew pictures to decorate Grace's room, performed little shows to make her laugh, and sat quietly with her when she needed peace. They never seemed frightened by her illness, only determined to help their aunt get better. Mrs. Patterson visited too, bringing news from the old neighborhood, holding Grace's hand, and telling Darmain stories about the boy he'd been, stories he'd tried so hard to forget, but now treasured, because they were part of his sister's sacrifice, part of his truth. Grace's room in Darmain's mansion was beautiful, decorated in soft blues and whites, with a view of the garden, filled with books and flowers and photographs. Photos of her and Darmain as children that she'd kept in that locker at the shelter. Photos of her mother, her grandfather, their old house on Baker Street. Darmain even tracked down Grace's old boyfriend, Thomas, who'd visited once, older now, but still kind, still carrying a torch after all these years. "You were the one that got away," he'd told her gently. "I understand why you couldn't marry me then. Your brother needed you. But Grace, I'm still waiting. When you beat this thing, when you're healthy again, maybe we could try again." It gave Grace something else to fight for. On a Tuesday afternoon in late May, 6 months after that night on the bridge, Dr. Morrison walked into Grace's room with a smile on her face. Grace was there for her regular scans, stronger now, her hair growing back in soft silver curls, color in her cheeks that hadn't been there before. "The tumors are shrinking significantly," Dr. Morrison announced. "The immunotherapy is working better than we hoped. Grace, I think we're going to beat this thing." The room erupted in joy. Darmain grabbed Grace in a fierce hug, lifting her off the ground despite her protests. Elena cried happy tears. Maya and Mia danced around the room singing, "Auntie Grace is getting better." 6 months after that, almost exactly a year after the night on the bridge, the family gathered around the dining room table for a celebration dinner. Grace sat at the head of the table, looking healthier than she had in years. Her hair had grown back, silver-streaked but thick and beautiful. Her face had filled out, color in her cheeks, light in her eyes that had been missing for so long. She wore a simple blue dress, not tattered, not worn, but new and beautiful, and chosen because she liked it, not because it was all she could afford. Thomas sat beside Grace, holding her hand under the table. They'd been dating for 3 months now, taking things slow, rediscovering each other after 20 years. He owned a small bookstore now, and Grace had started working there part-time, helping customers, organizing shelves, doing what she'd always dreamed of doing when she'd wanted to be a teacher, helping people discover stories. Darmain stood up, raising his glass of sparkling cider. The girls had insisted on a fancy drink for their special dinner.
"I want to make a toast," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "A year ago today, I thought I had everything. I had money, success, status, a beautiful family, but I had nothing. I had built my life on a foundation of lies and shame. I had everything except the one thing that mattered most, my sister, the person who made all of it possible." He looked at Grace, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Grace, you saved my life twice. Once when I was a kid with nothing, when you gave up your dreams so I could have mine, and once on that bridge, when your presence, even your pain, reminded me what love really means, what family really means." Grace wiped her eyes, smiling through tears. "You're going to make me cry again, and I just did my makeup." Elena added, standing beside her husband. "Grace, the girls and we want you to know that you're not just staying here temporarily. This is your home. Forever. You're not a guest. You're not a charity case. You're family. You're the heart of this family." Maya jumped up excitedly, nearly knocking over her glass. "And we planted that garden you wanted, with roses like the ones from your old house. Daddy showed us pictures, and we found the same kind. They're called peace roses, and Daddy says Grandpa planted them when you were born." Mia added, more quietly, but just as sincerely, "And we made you something." She pulled out a large scrapbook, homemade and covered in decorations. "It's a book about our family, our real family, with pictures of you and Daddy when you were little, and pictures of Grandma, and pictures of us now. Because you're not just our aunt, you're our hero." Grace opened the scrapbook with trembling hands. The first page had a photo of her at 18 holding baby Darmain in the hospital, looking exhausted but radiant with love. She'd forgotten this photo existed. Beside it, Maya had written in careful, practiced letters, "This is Auntie Grace holding Daddy for the first time. She was like his second mommy because she took care of him his whole life. She's the bravest person in the world." Grace couldn't speak. She pulled both girls into a hug, holding them tight, finally feeling like she belonged somewhere, like she had a place in the world that was truly hers. As the family laughed and ate together, sharing stories and passing dishes, Darmain caught Grace's eye across the table. No words were needed. The forgiveness, the love, the healing, it was all there in that single glance. Years of pain couldn't be erased, couldn't be undone, but they could be transformed into something beautiful, into gratitude, into a second chance. Mrs. Patterson's words from that night echoed in his mind.
Family isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something to cherish. He had learned that lesson almost too late, but he had learned it, and he would never, ever forget again. Later that evening, after dinner was cleared away and the girls were getting ready for bed, Darmain and Grace sat together in the garden. The peace roses were in full bloom, their soft pink and yellow petals glowing in the twilight. The air smelled sweet and clean, and fireflies danced among the flowers. "Do you remember," Grace said quietly, "when you were 7 and Dad left, you asked me if I was going to leave too?" Darmain nodded, his throat tight. "You said you'd never leave me. You promised. And you said that when you grew up, you'd take care of me so I'd never have to work so hard again. You'd buy me a house with a garden full of roses." Grace smiled, looking around at the beautiful garden, at the mansion beyond. "I told you I didn't need a big house. I just needed you to be happy." "I broke my promise," Darmain said, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes, but you kept it too in the end." Grace took his hand. "You gave me something more valuable than money or houses. You gave me your time, your presence, your love. This year, having you as my brother again, watching you with your family, seeing who you really are underneath all that fear and pride, that's worth more than anything." "I don't deserve your forgiveness," Darmain said. "Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway, because that's what family does. We forgive. We love. We give second chances." She squeezed his hand. "And besides, I need my little brother around to help me plan my wedding. Thomas proposed last week." Darmain snapped up, his face breaking into a huge smile. "He did? Grace, that's incredible. Why didn't you tell me?" "I'm telling you now," Grace laughed, the sound light and free, so different from the hollow, defeated voice she'd had on that bridge a year ago. "He wants to wait until I'm in full remission, but Dr. Morrison says that should be within the next 6 months, so I need my brother to walk me down the aisle. Will you?" Darmain pulled her into a tight hug, tears streaming down his face. "It would be the honor of my life." They sat together as the sun set, two siblings who'd lost each other and found their way back, two people who'd learned the hard way that success means nothing if you lose your soul in the pursuit of it, that family is something to be ashamed of, but something to be treasured. In the house behind them, Elena helped Maya and Mia get ready for bed, reading them stories about brave princesses and second chances. On the mantel sat a framed photo from that dinner, the whole family together, Grace in the center, surrounded by love. And in a frame beside it, yellowed and precious, was the letter from their mother. Darmain had framed it, kept it where he could see it every day, a reminder of what he'd almost lost, of what really mattered. Sometimes we forget where we came from. Sometimes pride and shame blind us to the people who love us most. Sometimes we build our lives on foundations we're afraid to acknowledge. But if we're lucky, very lucky, we get a second chance. We get a moment on a bridge in the rain when everything becomes clear. We get a letter that opens our eyes. We get a sister who loves us enough to forgive the unforgivable. Darmain Richards, formerly Thompson, had gotten his second chance, and he spent every day making sure he didn't waste it. Sometimes the greatest success isn't measured in dollars or status. Sometimes it's measured in the people who stand beside us, who love us when we don't deserve it, who give us second chances when we don't earn them. Grace could have let bitterness consume her. She could have walked away from Darmain forever after that night at the hotel. She could have stepped off that bridge and ended her pain. But love, real, sacrificial, unconditional love is stronger than pain, stronger than pride, stronger than shame. And Darmain could have continued living his light. He could have stayed in his comfortable mansion with his perfect family and his sanitized past. But sometimes God, or the universe, or fate, or whatever you believe in, puts someone in our path to shake us awake, to remind us of what really matters. For Darmain, that someone was Mrs. Patterson, and the letter from his mother,
and ultimately the sister standing on a bridge, ready to give up. This story isn't just about a rich man and his poor sister. It's about all of us, about the people we've forgotten in our climb to the top, about the sacrifices others made that we've taken credit for, about the shame we feel about where we came from and the price we pay when we deny our truth. It's about second chances. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you've forgotten or someone who sacrificed for you, don't wait. Don't let the pride steal the time you have left. Don't let the people you love die thinking they weren't enough. Pick up the phone, write the letter, show up at the door, say the words, "I'm sorry. I love you. Thank you."
Before it's too late, before you're standing on a bridge in the rain, realizing that all the success in the world means nothing if you've lost your soul. Did this story touch your heart? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful, inspiring stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Hit that share button and send this to someone who needs to hear this message today. And make sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss our next incredible story. Watch our next powerful story. Remember, success is not about what you gain for yourself. It's about what you give to others. And family, real family, is worth more than all the wealth in the world. Thank you for watching Parent Tales, where every story teaches us what it means to be human.